A young man ventured into a dry, forgotten shrine in the heart of a dying desert, searching for water. Instead, he found a woman trapped inside a pillar of salt, her eyes wide open, her lips sealed by a curse that echoed through time. Everyone in the village called it a cursed place. They said no one who entered came back sane. But Idris wasn't like everyone. When he touched the salt, the air cracked like lightning. The ground trembled. And the sea, miles away, suddenly rose. What happened next would awaken an ancient power, tear apart the bond between two royal brothers, and reveal a wonder no eye had seen in 1,000 years. This is the story of how Idris, son of a dying king, freed a mermaid from a shrine of salt, and how that single act of kindness unlocked a gift that could heal a kingdom or destroy it. They thought the mermaid had been silenced forever. But her song was not lost, only waiting for someone who could truly hear. And Idris? He was just trying to save his father's life. He had no idea he was about to change the fate of the world. Before we dive deeper into this epic tale, we'd love to know where you are watching from. Tell us in the comments. And if you love high-stakes fantasy filled with mermaids, magic, love, and sacrifice, don't just watch, be part of our adventure. Like this video, share it with someone who loves powerful stories, and hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow, we've got an extra special story lined up for you, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. The drums of Kalzuma beat low that night, slow and steady like the heartbeat of the earth. Outside the stone palace, the skies were restless. The moon was creeping toward the sun, and the stars had begun to flicker like frightened fireflies. It was not yet eclipse, but the air tasted strange. Dusty. Heavy. Afraid. Inside the royal chamber, King Zahari lay on his carved wooden bed, his skin pale like wet ash. His chest rose and fell with great effort. A circle of brass oil lamps lit the room, but even the flames danced in silence. At the foot of the bed stood two boys, no, young men. Twins. Idris and Bako. Idris, firstborn by heartbeats, had eyes like morning, soft, curious, always seeking meaning. Bako's eyes were night, sharp, steady, and hungry for more. Their father coughed, a dry rattle deep in his chest. He reached out with his trembling hand, and the twins leaned closer. "My sons," King Zahari whispered, his voice dry like wind over old bones. "The great wonder, you must bring it, before the eclipse eats the sun. Only then, can Kalzuma be saved." Idris stepped forward. "What wonder, father?" "The greatest wonder of the world," the old king rasped. "A treasure beyond gold, beyond time. It is not named, only known when found. Go. One to the east, one to the west. Bring it before the eclipse, or our land will fall." "Why can't we go together?" Idris asked. "Because the world is wide," Zahari said, coughing hard now. "And wonders are jealous things, they do not share paths." Bako knelt beside his father. "And what if we both return with different wonders? Which one will be the true one?" The king's lips curled into a weak smile. "Then the land will choose." A cold wind blew through the open windows, carrying with it the scent of dry rivers and wilting trees. Kalzuma was dying. The soil had turned to dust. Children no longer laughed in the courtyards. Crops had failed for 3 seasons. The eclipse, the elders whispered, would be the final breath, unless the wonder was found. Idris bowed. "I will go west, where the sun sleeps." Bako nodded. "Then I will go east, where the sun is born." King Zahari gripped both their hands, his old eyes shining. "One of you will save the kingdom, or doom it." Suddenly, the oil lamps flickered and went out all at once. The twins gasped. From the far corner of the room, a whisper rose, soft as silk, sharp as thorns. "The eclipse waits for no king." Both brothers turned, but no one was there. Only the shadow of the moon creeping slowly across the face of the sun. Before the sun could rise, the twins stood at the crossroads beyond the palace gates. The village of Kalzuma still slept, unaware of the quest now beginning. Their mother, Queen Dahlia, stood beside them with a clay bowl filled with kola nuts, bitter leaves, and river water. She dipped her fingers into the water and touched their foreheads. "May the spirits guide your feet," she said. "And may your heart stay whole." Baco stepped away first, pulling on his dark cloak. "I won't fail," he said. "I'll bring something greater than gold. Greater than memory." "Baco," Idris tried to stop him. "Let's not turn this into a race." But Baco only smirked. "Life is a race, brother. And only one can wear the crown." With that, he turned toward the rising sun, his steps firm, his back straight. Idris watched him disappear into the light. He sighed and turned west. His path led through the whispering hills, where voices lived in the wind and the rocks told stories. An old song rose from the trees, low and sad, a tune no one remembered learning but everyone knew. As Idris walked, he thought of what the wonder could be. A mountain made of jewels. A beast that breathes fire. A golden city buried in the sand. Or was it something else entirely? The path west was not a straight one. Idris traveled for 7 days through thick forests, cracked plains, and forgotten villages where children stared with wide eyes and old women watched in silence from under woven hats. The sun was harsher here. The land thirsted. Even the wind had grown quiet, as if holding its breath for something greater than itself. Each night, Idris dreamed the same dream. A voice, soft and broken, singing from beneath the earth. A tear falling, not from an eye, but from a soul. And always, the taste of salt on his tongue. On the 8th day, Idris came upon a strange place. The ground beneath his feet turned white and rough like broken coral. Salt. He had entered the dead stretch, where rain had not fallen in over 100 years. Bones of birds littered the ground, and twisted trees stood like tired ghosts, their branches reaching upward in silent prayers. In the heart of the dead stretch stood a structure made entirely of salt. It glowed faintly in the dying sunlight, its walls glistening like frost but never melting. The air around it shimmered with heat. The shrine was shaped like a spiral, as if it had been built by the wind itself, curling into a sacred knot. Idris stepped forward cautiously, brushing away a spider's web from the entrance. He whispered, "Hello." No reply. He entered. Inside, the salt walls were smooth and strangely cool. Carvings lined the surface, waves, fish, and women with long, flowing hair. Mermaids. In the center of the shrine stood a salt pillar. Inside it, trapped like a jewel in amber, was a girl. Her eyes were closed. Her hair floated gently around her as if underwater, though there was no water to be found. She looked peaceful. Sad. Timeless. Idris took a step closer, heart thudding. Then her eyes opened. A gasp escaped him. She pressed her hand against the inside of the salt wall. Her lips moved. But no sound came out. Idris leaned forward. "Can you hear me?" She nodded slowly. "What is this place? Are you a mermaid?" She touched her throat and shook her head. Then she pointed at the carvings on the wall. Idris turned. One of the carvings showed a man playing a flute to a woman in the sea. Another showed the woman trapped inside a shell. A third showed her crying, her tears turning to crystal as they hit the earth. "It's a story," Idris said, thinking aloud. "You were singing, someone trapped you. You lost your voice." She nodded again. Her face looked desperate now. She placed her hands flat on the salt, as if trying to push through. Idris reached out and touched the surface. Nothing happened. "Wait," he said. "There must be a way." He began to search the walls for symbols, buttons, anything. The silence around him was deep and strange, it almost had weight. Then he heard it. A single note. Soft and aching. Like a breath before tears. It wasn't with his ears that he heard it, it was in his chest. The voice from his dreams. It rose slowly, trembling, as if it hadn't been sung in centuries. It was not in any language he knew, yet he understood every word. Asterisk, listen not with ears, but heart. See not with eyes, but truth, asterisk. His body froze. The girl, no, the mermaid, was singing without sound. She stared at him, her lips moving slowly, her eyes begging. Idris placed a hand on his heart and closed his eyes. He let the song fill him. He didn't know how long he stood there, maybe minutes, maybe hours, but he saw her story in flashes. A mermaid named Nahala, whose voice could calm storms. She sang the ocean to sleep. But her voice was a treasure men tried to steal. One king, long ago, demanded she sing only for him. When she refused, he trapped her in salt, cursed her to silence unless someone truly listened, not to her words, but to her soul. Idris opened his eyes. He began to hum, not a tune he knew, but the one in his dream. The one that had called him here. As he hummed, the salt cracked. Tiny lines spread like veins across the pillar. The air snapped with energy. A light shimmered inside Nahala's chest, just above her heart. She closed her eyes. A tear rolled down her cheek. It hit the salt. The pillar shattered. Nahala fell into his arms, gasping, as though breathing for the first time. Her voice returned in a whisper. "You hurt me." Idris helped her sit up. "Are you all right?" She nodded weakly. "Thank you. I have waited so long." Then from her palm, a crystal formed. It was the size of a mango seed, glowing softly like a firefly trapped in glass. Idris stared at it. "What is that?" "My last tear," she said. "It can heal one thing. One soul. One wound. But only once. After that, it becomes dust." He looked at her, confused. "Then, it's a cure." "No," Nahala said. "It is understanding. Given shape." He took the tear gently. It was warm. Outside, the wind returned. Birds began to sing, small ones, timid. But the sound was life. Nahala stood shakily, her sea-colored hair catching the light. "What is your name, listener?" "Idris," he said. She smiled. "Then, Idris, know this, your journey is far from over. There are darker things ahead than silence." He looked at her, uncertain. "Will you come with me?" She nodded. "I owe a song to the world." Bako walked alone. The path east was thick with mud and fog. Mosquitoes danced in the air like tiny spirits, and the ground squelched beneath his leather boots. Trees stood tall and close together, their twisted roots like sleeping snakes. The forest whispered to itself in a language of rustling leaves and dripping water. No one came this way anymore. The villagers had told him not to go east. "It is cursed," one old man warned. "No bird sings past the Noma trees. Not even death goes there happily." But Bako only laughed. "Then I shall find what even death fears." He pressed on. By the third day, sunlight no longer reached him. The trees grew so thick that even the sky disappeared. Mist covered everything, curling around his legs like searching hands. Strange cries echoed in the distance, long, watery sounds, neither human nor animal. On the fourth night, Bako saw the signs. Cloth strips tied to branches. Bones hanging from strings. Symbols carved in tree trunks. He had entered the swamp of echoes. He remembered the stories. "There is a witch in the swamp," the people said. "She sees with no eyes. She hears your soul before your mouth. She trades what no man should trade." And Bako. Bako had come to trade. By sunrise, he reached her. The clearing was small, almost sacred. In the center stood a crooked hut made of reed, bone, and black stone. Smoke slipped from the roof like fingers reaching for the sky. Bako stepped forward. "Witch of the East, I have come to bargain." Silence. The smoke twisted. Then the hut creaked, as if waking from sleep. A shape appeared at the door. She was bent and small, wrapped in a robe made of feathers and ash. Her hair was white and thick like river cotton. Her eyes were closed, but they moved beneath the lids, twitching like dreaming snakes. "I know your name," she said. Her voice was soft, but it cut the air like a knife. Bako, son of Zahari. The forgotten twin. The hungry flame. He stood straighter. You see well for someone blind. I see the truth. You came to steal power. No, Bako said, lifting his chin. I came to earn it. She smiled without joy. All who come say the same. She stepped aside. Enter. If you are bold. Inside, the hut was dark but warm. The walls were lined with jars, some held feathers, some held glowing stones, and some held things that blinked. A small fire burned in a clay bowl. The witch sat cross-legged before it. Tell me what you want. Bako didn't hesitate. I need something to stop time. Not forever, just long enough. I must return with a wonder greater than my brother's. A gift worthy of a crown. The witch laughed. Ah. The crown. That shiny snake. Many have died for less. She reached behind her and brought out a root. It was shaped like a curled finger. Dark. Dry. But it pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. This is the Okuta root. It grows from the grave of time itself. One bite can freeze the world for as long as your breath holds. Bako reached forward eagerly. I'll take it. Her hand shot out, stopping him. There is a price. He frowned. Gold. Jewels. Name it. No, she said, voice like cracking wood. Each dawn, you will lose a piece of your soul. Not flesh. Not memory. But the part of you that dreams, laughs, loves. Every sunrise, a little more will vanish. Bako hesitated. How much can I lose? She smiled slowly. That is not the right question. Ask instead, how much can you keep before you are no longer Bako? He looked at the root. Then at her. Give it to me. She nodded. So be it. As he took the root, a strange pain pinched behind his eyes. For a moment, he forgot the sound of his mother's lullaby. The witch whispered, You have started a clock that cannot be stopped. He turned to leave. But she added, One more thing. Your brother walks west. Bako paused. What of it? He has found a voice the world forgot. A tear that heals not wounds, but hearts. Beware the strength of those who listen, not just speak. He scowled. Idris is weak. He believes in stories. And you believe in shadows, the witch replied. The truth lies somewhere between. Bako left the swamp with the Okuta root in a leather pouch. Behind him, the trees closed like lips over a secret. Idris and Nahala make their way back toward Kalzuma, unsure of what awaits them. At the same time, Bako returns, soul thinning, eyes glowing, with the root that bends time itself. The eclipse draws near. The land grows sicker. The people cry out. But which brother will act first? And at what cost? The road back to Kalzuma was long, but Idris no longer felt alone. Nahala walked beside him, her steps light and slow. Though she had legs now, shimmering brown with a trace of sea glow, she still moved like water, smooth and soft. Her eyes were no longer hollow, and though her voice had not returned, her smile spoke. Idris carried the tear in a cloth of goat wool, wrapped and tied with palm thread. The crystal glowed faintly, like moonlight caught in a drop of rain. It hummed against his chest. They passed through dry villages. Crops had withered. The riverbeds were cracked. Children sat under trees with empty bowls and eyes full of questions. One woman, old and thin, reached out as they passed. Prince Idris, she whispered, will the king save us? Will he speak to the gods? Idris touched her hand gently. We carry a gift. A healing gift. For the land. For all. The woman looked past him, her eyes resting on Nahala. Is she a river maiden? Idris nodded. She was lost. Now she's found. She looks like hope. Nahala smiled. That night, they camped under an Irako tree. The wind carried dust and the smell of dying earth. Idris sat close to the fire, watching the tear glow in the dark. It pulsed like a living heart. "I wonder," he said softly, "what my brother is bringing back." Nahala tilted her head. "He always wanted more," Idris continued. "Even when we were children. If I built a hut, he built a tower. If I carved a flute, he carved a drum. He doesn't see me as a brother anymore, just a wall he must climb." Nahala looked into the fire. Then she slowly lifted her hands and pressed one to his chest. Idris blinked. "My heart." She nodded, then traced a line from his chest to her own. Then she drew a circle in the air between them. He understood. "Our hearts are one. We share this journey." He smiled. "You say much without speaking." She smiled too, and for the first time, Idris saw her tears, not the magical kind, but human. Real. Deep. Healing in their own way. Far away, on the same night, Bako stood at the edge of a dry riverbank. The stars above were quiet. The moon hung low, a thin silver cut in the sky. Bako opened his leather pouch. Inside lay the Okuta root. He hadn't used it yet. But every morning, when the sun rose, he felt it. A piece of his soul slipping away. He no longer dreamt. Laughter no longer came to him. And he had not thought of his mother in 3 days. He stared at the root. "You'll make me king," he muttered. The root said nothing. But in the stillness, Bako heard a whisper, not from the root, but from somewhere deeper. "What are you becoming?" He shoved the root back in the pouch and kept walking. 3 days later, Idris and Nahala reached the hills above Kalzuma. The kingdom lay quiet below, too quiet. Smoke rose from parts of the city, and the palace roof glimmered in the hot sun. The people moved like ants, slow and tired. The eclipse would come in 2 days. Idris turned to Nahala. "We must hurry." But as they began to descend, drums echoed across the valley. Boom. 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 The rhythm was slow, deep, royal. A voice shouted from below. "Bako has returned. Prince Bako has returned with the wonder of the East." Idris froze. "Already?" Nahala took his hand. Together, they ran. In the palace courtyard, crowds had gathered. Bako stood atop the stone steps, wearing a robe of deep red and gold. He looked taller, sharper. But his eyes had changed. They were colder. Empty in places. In his hand, he held the root in a glass case. "The wonder of the East," the chief announcer bellowed. "A root that stops time itself. A gift for the dying king." The people gasped. Even the elders looked amazed. Idris pushed through the crowd, breathless. "Brother." Bako turned. Their eyes met. For a moment, the crowd vanished. The wind paused. The earth held its breath. Idris stepped forward. "I bring the tear of Nahala. It heals not wounds, but hearts. It can save our land." Gasps again. Nahala stepped beside him, her hair now tied with cowrie shells. Her feet were bare. Her presence made the air feel softer. Bako's jaw tightened. "You brought a song and a tear. I brought time itself. I stopped the world for a king." "The world doesn't need stopping," Idris said. "It needs healing." Bako scoffed. "Always the gentle one. But gentleness does not rule." The drums stopped. And from the palace, the king's voice was heard. "Let them enter." It was weak. Thin. But it was still King Zahari. The guards opened the gates. The brothers entered together, but the silence between them was heavier than the crown. Inside the king's chamber, the old man lay beneath cloths soaked in oils and herbs. His beard was white. His hands, bones under skin. "My sons," he whispered. "My time is near. Show me the wonder." Bako stepped forward first. "Father, I offer the root of time." One bite can stop the world. You will live as long as you choose your breath. We can rule forever. Zahari blinked slowly. Then Idris knelt beside him. I offer the crystal tear, born from true listening. It can heal. But only once. One soul. One moment. The king's eyes turned to Nahala. You brought her from silence. Idris nodded. By learning her song. The king smiled faintly. Then he looked to Bako. And what did you give for this root? Bako hesitated. Zahari's eyes sharpened. What did you pay? A piece of my soul, Bako said. Each dawn. The king's eyes closed. The wonder is not power, he whispered. It is understanding, sacrifice, voice. The sun moved behind the clouds. Darkness fell. The eclipse had begun. And with it, the king took his last breath. The sky darkened like a veil being drawn across the heavens. The eclipse began with a silence so deep that even the birds forgot to sing. The sun, proud and blazing, was swallowed by the moon's cold shadow, and all of Kalzuma trembled. The palace bells stopped. The drums fell quiet. Inside the king's chamber, a single breath, the last breath, escaped from King Zahari's lips. His eyes remained open, fixed on something beyond this world. Idris fell to his knees. Father, he whispered, shaking the old man's frail hand, Father, please. But Zahari was gone. A gust of wind burst through the windows. The cloths above the royal bed fluttered like wings. Candles blew out, and shadows danced along the walls. From the crowd outside, a cry rose up. The king is dead. Another voice answered. Who will be king now? The tension snapped like a drum skin stretched too tight. Idris bowed his head, heartbroken. He looked at the crystal tear glowing softly in its cloth, still warm, still full of power. Beside him, Nahala placed a hand on his shoulder. Her expression was gentle, mournful. Her sea-born eyes shimmered with sadness. But Bako stood still as a stone. He did not cry. He did not speak. He turned slowly, as though listening to something far away. Then he stepped forward and raised the glass case that held the Okuta root. A tremble passed through his hand. The throne is mine, he said coldly. Idris rose to his feet. What are you doing? I brought the greater wonder. Time itself. The king is dead, but his command remains. One of us must return with the greatest wonder of the world. And I have. You gave your soul for that root, Bako. And I'll give more, Bako hissed. As much as it takes. Nahala stepped forward, her bare feet making no sound. She looked into Bako's eyes, and for a moment, something in him flickered, hesitated. But it was gone in the next breath. Without another word, Bako opened the case. The Okuta root pulsed, dark red like dried blood. He held it up, closed his eyes, and bit into it. Crack! The world groaned. A ripple of stillness spread from the root. Guards who had been walking froze mid-step. A servant dropping a jug stood locked in place, water frozen in midair. The eclipse paused in the sky, sun and moon trapped in embrace. Time itself had stopped. Only Bako moved. Only Bako breathed. He looked around at the frozen faces of the council, of Idris, of Nahala. Their eyes wide, mouths open, trapped like statues of clay. He walked past his dead father's bed and climbed the royal steps to the stone of fire, the ancient throne of Kalzuma. He sat. It was cold. Cold as the grave. Mine, he whispered. But something felt wrong. His chest ached. His fingers trembled. He looked at his hands, once strong and sure. Now pale. Thin. He touched his face. His skin was cold, like river stone. A cracking sound echoed. He looked down. A piece of his palm had turned gray. Brittle. It flaked off like dry bark. No. He stood, stumbling down the steps. No. He ran to a mirror in the wall. The reflection that looked back wasn't the Prince of Kalzuma. It was a hollow-eyed boy with skin turning to ash, soul eaten by time. His voice shook. I've broken it. He turned to Idris, frozen in mid-step. Nahala's hand was outstretched toward him, her face caught in a silent plea. I didn't want this, Bako choked. I want it to matter. I want it to be more. He sank to his knees. Tears streamed from his eyes, but even the tears turned to crystal and fell to the floor. Time groaned again. Then, a sound. A hum. A voice. Nahala was singing. Time cracked. The song echoed through the frozen palace like sunlight melting frost. It was not loud, but it was true. It came not from her lips, still frozen, but from her very soul. A memory song. A healing song. A voice from the deep. The crystal tear, still in Idris' satchel, glowed brighter. And slowly, like dawn breaking, the world began to move again. Outside, the people gasped and ducked as time resumed. Inside the chamber, Idris stumbled forward, blinking. What happened? He looked around. The air was colder. The guards looked pale. Servants were weeping. And Bako lay collapsed by the throne, arms wrapped around his chest, eyes open, lips dry. Idris rushed to him. Brother. I tried to hold it, Bako rasped. But the root, it demands too much. I wanted to be great. You are my brother, Idris said. That was always enough. He reached into his satchel and pulled out the glowing tear. It pulsed once. Then again. Nahala stepped close, her voice now fully free, singing words that no one else knew but all could feel. Heal what was broken, mend what was torn, give back the peace that was worn. Idris touched the tear to Bako's chest. Light exploded. A wave of warmth swept over the palace, over the city, over the land. Dead trees shivered and turned green. Cracked rivers flowed again. Women in dry villages lifted their clay pots and found water pouring in. And in the heart of Kalzuma, Prince Bako opened his eyes. He wept. I'm sorry. I forgive you, Idris whispered. But the tear vanished. It had been used. One soul. One moment. One healing. The eclipse ended. The sun returned. And in the golden light, the people of Kalzuma gathered at the palace gates. They had no king. But they had brothers. And a mermaid who had found her voice. The palace had known silence before, when the king breathed his last, when time stood still, but now the silence was different. It was the silence that comes after a storm. A silence filled with questions. Outside the palace gates, the people of Kalzuma had gathered like river reeds in a flood. From elders with silver-threaded hair to children wrapped on their mothers' backs, they all waited. Not for a king, but for truth. Inside the great hall, Idris and Bako stood side by side, the crystal tear gone, the throne empty. Nahala's song still hummed in the stone, faint, like waves against a distant shore. Bako touched his chest. His breath was steady now, but something deep within him still felt hollow. I don't deserve to stand here, he whispered. You do, Idris said softly. Because you came back. I wanted to take everything. I was willing to lose my soul just to be king. And I was ready to give everything, not to rule, but to heal. Bako's voice trembled. Then you should be king. But Idris shook his head. No, Bako. This throne doesn't belong to me. Or you. It belongs to Kalzuma. The people must choose. The time for crowns given by blood is over. We must earn them now. Nahala stepped forward. Then you must let the land decide. They turned to her. Her skin shimmered like wet stone, her eyes dark as ocean caves. The earth listens, she continued. When I was imprisoned in the salt shrine, I heard its cries. When Baco broke time, something ancient woke up. The land will not sleep again until it sees your hearts. Both of you. What do you mean? Baco asked. A shadow stirs in the east. You broke the laws of the earth, and now the earth will test you. The trial of Ash is coming. Idris furrowed his brow. The what? Before Nahala could answer, the floor beneath them rumbled. A sound, deep and distant, like a drum buried beneath stone. Boom. Dust fell from the rafters. Boom. The sky outside flickered as if fireflies danced in daylight. Then, a messenger burst into the palace. He was barefoot, covered in red soil, his robes torn by thorns. His eyes were wild with fear. Your Highnesses, he gasped, unable to tell which brother to bow to. From the east, from the deep forest, there's something coming. What did you see? Idris asked quickly. It's not human, the men stammered. A man made of ash. He walks on fire. He turns rivers dry just by looking at them. The forest animals run from him. The leaves catch fire without a spark. Nahala's eyes darkened. It is the one who woke. You mean the trial of Ash is real? Baco said, backing away. It is no mere trial, she replied. It is a being born when the balance of the world is broken. Your act, Baco, stopping time, it cracked the old agreement between the sun, the sea, and the soil. Idris stepped forward. Then we must fix it. But how? Baco asked, voice shaking. We don't have the crystal tear anymore. No, Nahala said. But the earth still holds wonders. Not easy ones. Not safe ones. But real. She turned to Idris and Baco, both still bruised by grief and power. If you would restore Kalzuma and stop the Ashwalker, you must journey to the sacred ground of Zubari. Zubari, Idris repeated. That name. Father spoke of it once, in stories. Said it was the place where the earth first sang. It lies beyond the old mountains, Nahala said. Guarded by the three-faced tree. The journey will test your minds, your hearts, and your bond. Baco looked at his brother, uncertainty flickering behind his eyes. After everything I've done, you still want me with you. Idris didn't hesitate. You are my brother. This journey isn't about kings. It's about healing. Baco's throat tightened. Then I'll go. Good, Nahala nodded. We leave at dawn. Later that night. The palace was quiet again. The stars above shone like eyes, blinking down at a world that had lost its balance. Idris sat beside his father's body, now wrapped in white cloth and placed on a mat woven with royal beads. You were a good king, father, he whispered. But maybe now, we must be something different. Not rulers from above, but guides who walk beside our people. He turned as Nahala entered, her hair braided with beads of seashell. I heard your song, he said. It wasn't just mine, she replied. It was the voice of the river, the wind, and the ones who remember. He looked at her, truly looked. You saved us. You listened, she said, when no one else did. That was enough. He blushed and looked away, suddenly shy. Will you return to the sea when this is over? She paused. If there's still a sea left. A silence passed between them, thick but gentle. Meanwhile, in the forests of the east, a jackal ran. Its fur was singed, its tongue dry. It ran until its legs failed, then collapsed beneath a tree. The grass around it caught fire. A tall shape moved through the burning leaves. His skin was gray, cracked like old charcoal. His eyes glowed red. His footsteps left prints of smoke. Where he passed, the world whispered. Ash. He turned his head west. To Kalzuma. To the brothers. And smiled. Not with joy. But with hunger. The morning came with a sky painted in pale gold, as if the sun was too afraid to rise fully. 3 figures stood at the palace gates, Idris, Baco, and Nahala, each clothed in travel robes sewn with protection charms. Around their necks hung small leather pouches filled with ground kola nut, river sand, and goat hair, tokens from the village priestess meant to ward off spirits of confusion. The people of Kalzuma had gathered once more. This time, not for mourning, but for hope. An old man stepped forward. His face was a roadmap of years, and his back curved like a question mark. "You go to Zubari?" he asked. Idris nodded. "Yes, Baba." "Then listen to the wind when it speaks. It carries the voice of things older than kings." Bako added quietly, "Even the silence in the forest has ears, Baba." The old man gave a small, wrinkled smile. "Good. Then perhaps the land still has a chance." A small girl ran up, offering a gourd of honey water. "For when your mouths forget sweetness," she whispered shyly. Idris knelt and took it gently. "We will remember." As they walked through the gates, Nahala turned once, just once, to look at the kingdom behind them. The river shimmered in the distance, glinting like the crystal tear that was no more. She whispered under her breath, "Let us be worthy. The forest begins." The journey eastward started gently, with wide paths under soft trees. Birds chirped. Lizards darted across the warm red soil. But the deeper they walked, the quieter the forest grew. It was as if the very air thickened, each step felt heavier. "Do you feel that?" Bako asked. "Yes," Nahala answered. "We are being watched." "By what?" Idris asked, hand tightening around the staff he now carried, a gift from his father's chamber. "The forest," she said. That night, they camped under the branches of a giant oba tree. Its roots spread like fingers across the earth, tangled and protective. Idris lit a small fire. The flame danced low, respectful of the woods around them. They sat in a triangle, close, but not touching. "So," Bako said, poking the fire with a stick, "this tree with 3 faces. What is it, exactly?" Nahala looked up at the branches above. Her face was serious. "It is the memory of the earth. The 3-faced tree sees time in 3 ways, past, present, and what may come. It guards the entrance to Zubari. If it finds you unworthy, it will not speak. And if it does speak?" Idris asked. "Then you must answer truthfully," she replied. "Lie, and the path will vanish forever." Bako scoffed nervously. "Great. A talking tree with a built-in lie detector." "It is not a joke, Bako," Nahala said, her voice firmer. "Many have gone. Few have returned. Some wander still, forgetting who they are, caught in the echoes of their own lies." Silence fell. A cricket chirped once, then stopped, as if even it feared being heard. Idris finally asked, "Have you ever been to Zubari?" Nahala stared into the fire. "No. But my mother sang of it before the sea took her." She reached into her satchel and pulled out a tiny seashell, smooth, violet blue, shaped like a teardrop. She said this would call the river spirits when I lost my way. I've never used it. "Why not?" Bako asked, curiosity pricking his tone. "Because," she said softly, "I wanted to find my own voice first." Idris leaned forward, his eyes full of wonder. "You truly are one of the sea's wonders, Nahala." She smiled, a real one this time, warm and shy. But then, snap. A branch cracked in the distance. Bako leapt to his feet, drawing his short blade. Idris stood too, firelight glinting off his staff. Something moved in the darkness beyond the trees. Then, a low growl. "Wolves." Idris whispered. "No," Nahala said, standing now, her seashell clenched in her fist. "Not wolves. Spirit beasts." From the shadows stepped 2 long-legged creatures. Their fur was mottled, but their eyes glowed green. Not animal green, spirit green. Each had horns like twisted branches and teeth like broken glass. The taller one hissed. "You do not belong," it snarled. "The forest does not welcome oath-breakers." Bako stepped forward. "We made no oaths here." The second creature circled him. But you broke one with time itself, boy. Nahala raised the shell to her lips. We do not seek harm. Let the old waters speak. She blew into the shell. Nothing happened. Bako's mouth went dry. Is it broken? No, Nahala said, her voice trembling. Something is blocking it. The taller beast growled again. You carry the scent of ash. You are not ready. Turn back. But Idris stepped forward. His voice calm, full of the king his father had raised. We will not turn back. We seek Zubari. We walk with truth. The creatures paused. They sniffed the air. Then, slowly, they stepped back into the dark. The tree watches, one whispered. Speak true, or be lost. Then they vanished. The fire sputtered. A cold wind blew, even though no storm had come. They didn't speak the rest of the night. The next day, as they moved deeper, the trees grew taller and stranger. Some had bark like snake skin. Others whispered names they did not know. At midday, they reached a stone carved with an ancient face, eyes closed, mouth open. This is it, Nahala said. The threshold. Beyond this, the forest does not forget. They stepped through. The world tilted. Idris felt his memories swim. Bako gasped, clutching his chest. Something's wrong. A great shadow loomed ahead. And there, rooted in the center of a clearing, stood the tree with three faces. It was massive, its trunk wide as a house, its branches reaching the clouds. On one side was a young face, eyes wide with wonder. On the other, an old face, eyes closed in pain. In the middle, a face without age, its mouth open, as if always about to speak. Then, from the middle face, a voice echoed. Who dares seek Zubari? Idris stepped forward. We are the sons of Zahari. We come to restore what was broken. The tree's eyes opened, slowly, heavily. Then speak, and speak only the truth. The tree with three faces towered over them like a god carved from living wood. Its bark shifted and shimmered like scales. The eyes of the middle face glowed a deep bronze, watchful, waiting. You seek the greatest wonder, the tree spoke again, its voice layered with echoes of countless centuries. But only those who know themselves may pass. Wind blew, though no leaves moved. The very roots of the tree pulsed like veins. Then, with a sound like thunder breathing, the ancient tree asked, Who will answer first? Idris stepped forward. I will. The face of youth on the tree opened its eyes, bright, curious, innocent. Idris, son of Zahari, it said with a child's voice yet old as rain. You speak often of love, but answer this, do you love your brother more than your dream? The question hit like a blow to the chest. Idris froze. He looked at Bako, who stood beside Nahala, arms folded tightly, jaw clenched. Idris's dream had always been to bring healing, to return light to their land. But he had also dreamed of ruling, of being the wise king their father had always seen in him. Did he love Bako more than the crown? His voice came out soft. I love my brother, but sometimes, I wish he understood me. The tree's child face blinked slowly. Is that your truth? No, Idris whispered. That is my wound. He straightened. My truth is, I love my brother more than the dream, because without him beside me, the dream would be empty. Silence. Then the child face closed its eyes again. The middle face spoke, truth accepted. Step aside. Idris exhaled, as though he had been underwater for hours. He backed away, trembling. Now the old face opened its eyes, cloudy, deep, filled with sorrow. Bako, son of Zahari, it rasped like dry wind over old stones. You crave power to protect what is yours. But answer this, if your brother were crowned king, would you still walk beside him? Bako flinched. He stared at the ground, then at Idris. They had shared a womb, a cradle, a home. But Bako had always felt like the shadow, the second son, the one who had to fight harder just to be seen. Would he walk beside Idris? Could he? His voice was bitter. I walked behind him all our lives. The old face didn't blink. Is that your truth? No, Baco said slowly, and his voice cracked. It's my anger. He closed his eyes. I would walk beside him. Not behind. Not ahead. Beside. Because I'm tired of being alone. The tree groaned, the sound deep and ancient. Truth accepted. You may pass. Baco stumbled back, as if the roots had released him. Only Nahala remained. She stepped forward with grace, but her eyes were tight, her hand gripping her seashell. The middle face gazed at her. Nahala of the tides, it said in a voice like waves retreating from shore. You were born of two worlds, but belong to neither. Answer this, do you sing for your people, or do you sing to be heard? She froze. All her life, her voice had been taken, stolen by the curse. Now she could sing, and the world listened. But why did she sing? For the mermaids who had lost their names? For her mother who had vanished beneath the waves? Or for herself? Her hand trembled. I don't know. The tree leaned closer. Bark split like old skin. Then you must walk the trial of the echoing depths. Only there will your voice find its truth. With that, the ground rumbled. The clearing split open, revealing a path of glowing stones. Vines pulled back. Wind howled. Baco looked to Idris. We passed. Why does she still have a trial? Idris was silent. Nahala stepped forward, unafraid. I must know my song's reason, she said. Or I may sing lies without meaning to. Then she turned and walked into the darkness alone. Trial of the echoing depths. Nahala moved through a tunnel lit by pale blue light. The walls pulsed with memory. She heard voices. Her mother's lullaby. Her own laughter as a child. The silence when her voice was taken. A voice echoed from the stone. You sang for freedom. But what do you do with it now? Another voice, her father's, whom she had never known. Do you sing for the sea, or for the land? Then, a cruel voice, the curse itself. You sing to be seen, don't you? You want to be more than a forgotten fish girl. No, she whispered. I want to be more than a memory. The voices roared, drowning her. The tunnel spun. She fell to her knees. And from that place of stillness, she sang. Not to win. Not to impress. She sang her fear. Her hope. Her loneliness. She sang her truth. The tunnel lit up, glowing with warm gold. The voices fell silent. And the crystal tear, once thought gone, glimmered before her, reborn. Returned to the brothers. When Nahala returned, she was glowing with peace. She held a second crystal tear in her hand. Idris gasped. But the tear was used. It was, she said. But truth rebirths truth. The tree with three faces spoke one final time. You have passed. The way to Zubri opens. The roots parted, revealing a path of shining white stones leading into a hidden valley beyond the forest. The trio stood together. One heart full of love. One heart healing from ambition. One heart singing a true song. And ahead, Zubri awaited. The path into the valley was narrow, carved into the ribs of the earth like a wound healed over time. Idris led the way, his hand resting near the hilt of his carved walking staff, not as a weapon, but as a comfort. Behind him, Baco walked in silence, his expression unreadable, and Nahala came last, cradling the second crystal tear in her palm as if it were a flame that could be blown out by a wrong breath. Above them, the sky was changing. Clouds rolled like slow beasts, darkening toward the horizon. A hush settled over the valley, the kind of quiet that only came when the land itself was listening. A wide arch of stone greeted them at the valley's mouth. Strange symbols were etched into the stone, some looked like open eyes, others like rivers winding through skulls. The Valley of Forgotten Kings, Idris whispered, reading the faded inscription aloud. This is where kings come when the world forgets them, Nahala murmured, staring into the thick silver mist that pooled inside like a waiting ocean. Or where they go when they have forgotten themselves, Baco added. They stepped beneath the arch. The mist curled around their ankles like cats, cool and whispering. Suddenly, Idris stopped. Do you hear that? A low humming sound came from deep within the mist. It wasn't music, but it had rhythm. Like a chant. Like thousands of voices repeating the same name over and over. What are they saying? Baco asked, narrowing his eyes. Zahari, Nahala whispered. They're saying your father's name. They pressed on. The mist thickened, and strange shapes appeared, statues, broken thrones, weapons rusted into the soil. But none of them moved. Until one did. The Ghost King's warning. From behind a cracked throne, a figure stepped into view. He wore the tatters of royal robes. His crown was bent and broken, and his face was hidden beneath a bone-white mask. His voice was hollow and deep. 3 seekers come with trembling hearts. 1 carries love. 1, ambition. 1, voice. But do they carry truth? The brothers froze. We have passed the tree of 3 faces, Idris said, lifting his chin. We have earned the right to walk this path. The Ghost King shook his head. This path cannot be earned. It can only be remembered. He raised a skeletal finger and pointed to Baco. You have made a bargain with time. You feed the swamp witch with your soul. How long before there is nothing left? Baco stiffened, his eyes flashing. I made the sacrifice so we could save our father. No. You made it so you could be king, the ghost said without cruelty. But kings who give away their soul forget why they rule. He turned to Idris. You seek to heal. But what happens when your healing is not enough? When love does not bring peace? I will find another way, Idris said, his voice low. Then you must learn to fail with grace. At last, he looked at Nahala. Child of sea and song. You have a true voice now. But the louder you sing, the more enemies you will draw. Will you still sing when it brings war? Nahala swallowed. I will sing for those who cannot. The ghost lowered his hand. Then you may enter the circle of thrones. He stepped aside. The circle of thrones. They stepped into a wide clearing. Stone thrones stood in a ring, 12 of them, each carved from a different material, fire-blackened wood, obsidian, coral, ivory, river stone, bones, and more. Each throne held the ghost of a forgotten king or queen. The sky above was crimson now, an omen of the eclipse drawing near. A deep rumbling filled the air. Sons of Zahari, the throne spirits spoke in one voice. You seek the greatest wonder. But wonder is not given, it is chosen. The ground cracked in the center of the circle, revealing a well of glowing light. From the light rose a pedestal, and upon it, a box of old driftwood, carved with shells and flames and tiny thorns. The lid opened by itself. Inside was nothing. Idris blinked. Is this a test? It is the final question, said a spirit queen with a spear of gold in her hand. What do you place inside the box, to make it whole? Baco frowned. Another tear. Nahala tilted her head. A song. But Idris stepped forward. He reached into the pouch by his side and pulled out something small, humble, and old, a strip of woven leather. Their father had tied it around his wrist since they were babies. Zahari once said it came from his own mother, Queen Lami, a reminder that the crown was not made of gold, but of people. I give memory, Idris said, laying the strip into the box. So the next king remembers who he is. The box glowed. Suddenly, a figure began to form in the light above the box, a projection of the past, shimmering with spirit. It was King Zahari, young and proud, before sickness took him. He smiled. And he spoke. The true wonder is not found in power, nor in magic, nor even in the voice of the sea. The true wonder is the heart that chooses love over pride, healing over war, and truth over fear. The box closed. The circle of thrones shuddered, and then broke apart, turning to dust. A path appeared, winding into the far edge of the valley. And in the air, King Zahari's final voice whispered, "Come home, my sons. The eclipse is near." The air was heavy with dust and whispered grief when Idris, Bako, and Nahala finally reached the outskirts of Kalzuma. The once vibrant town looked dull and tired, as if the sun itself had lost its will to shine. Crooked huts sagged under the weight of neglect, and the once bustling market square stood empty, save for a few children hiding behind cracked walls. Idris tightened his grip on Nahala's hand. "The land is hurting. We must hurry." Bako's eyes flicked nervously toward the sky, where dark clouds were gathering like a storm ready to break. His breathing was shallow, his usual arrogance replaced by a quiet tension. "Look," said a voice from behind a broken wall. It was old Maji, the village storyteller and one of the few still moving about. His face was lined with worry. "The king is gone. The eclipse has begun, and with it, a silence heavier than night has fallen." Nahala stepped forward. "Where is the palace? We must see the queen." "The palace stands, but something is wrong," Maji said slowly. "Bako has been using the root. Time is breaking." Bako's jaw clenched, and his hands shook slightly. "I did what was necessary. For the kingdom." Maji looked deep into Bako's eyes. "No bargain is free, young prince. You are losing more than you know." The palace gates. As the trio approached the palace gates, the massive doors groaned open slowly, as if the palace itself was breathing in pain. Inside, the great hall was a shadow of its former glory. Tattered banners hung limp, and the marble floors were cracked and stained. In the center of the hall, Queen Lami, draped in a cloak of deep blue, knelt beside the king's lifeless body. The room was silent except for her soft sobs. Idris knelt beside his mother, his voice trembling. "Mother, we have returned with the greatest wonder." Queen Lami's eyes fluttered open. "You have returned, but the king." "The eclipse is taking him," Nahala said quietly. "But there is hope. The crystal tear can heal the land." Bako's gaze darted around nervously. "And I have something too, a root that stops time. I can protect the kingdom." The price of power. Suddenly, the room grew colder. Shadows stretched like claws along the walls. The root in Bako's hand pulsed darkly. Idris stepped forward, voice firm. "Bako, this is not the way." Bako's eyes glowed with desperation. "You don't understand. The root gives me power. With it, I can stop the eclipse and crown myself king. No more weakness." Nahala's voice was calm but steady. "But at what cost, Bako? Each dawn you lose part of your soul. Soon, there will be nothing left." The prince's hand trembled, then clenched the root tighter. A sudden crack echoed through the hall as the walls began to crumble. The collapse. Dust and stones rained down. Queen Lami grabbed Idris's arm. "The palace cannot hold much longer." Idris looked toward the window. The sun was almost fully swallowed by the moon. "We must act now," he said. He pulled out the crystal tear, its light glowing softly in his palm. Nahala stepped beside him. "Sing with me. We will call back the life to this land." Together, their voices rose, a soft song of healing and hope that seemed to reach into the heart of the dying earth. Outside, the ground began to pulse with light. Green shoots burst from the cracked soil. Rivers began to flow again, and the sky cleared a little, letting slivers of sunlight peek through the eclipse's shadow. But inside, Bako's grip on the root faltered. His face was pale, eyes wide with fear. I don't feel myself anymore," he whispered. Idris moved toward his brother. "Let me help you, Bako. You don't have to lose yourself." The choice. The eclipse darkened to totality. A moment hung between them, a breath held by the world. Then Bako dropped the root, his body trembling violently. "I am lost," he gasped. But in that moment, the ground beneath them shook fiercely. The palace's last foundation cracked and crumbled. Nahala's voice rang out, strong and clear. I will sing, for the lost, for the broken, for the future. Her song filled the hall, weaving through the dust and rubble, weaving life back into the land, into the people. Outside, the eclipse began to fade. The sun returned slowly, pushing back the dark cloak of the eclipse. The land breathed a sigh, as if waking from a long, troubled sleep. The scent of fresh earth and growing green filled the air. But inside the shattered palace, the silence was thick, heavier than before. Idris helped Queen Lami to her feet, steadying her trembling hands. We did what we could, Idris said softly. The land will heal. Queen Lami's eyes, wet with tears, looked toward her other son. Bako, she whispered, voice breaking. Where is he? Idris turned just as the palace doors groaned open. Bako stepped inside, his face pale, eyes haunted. I am here, Bako said, but his voice was hollow, like wine through dead leaves. A brother's plea. Idris took a step closer. Bako, we all saw what happened. The route, it took you. Bako looked away, ashamed. I thought I could control it. I thought it would give me the strength to save our kingdom. Nahala, standing beside Queen Lami, spoke gently. Power without understanding always comes at a cost. Bako's hands trembled. Each dawn, a piece of me fades. I feel empty inside, like I am losing my soul. Queen Lami moved forward, placing a hand on Bako's shoulder. My son, there is always hope. We must find a way to mend what is broken. Idris nodded. The crystal tear can heal wounds, but not a shattered soul. We need to find another way. The people's return. Outside, the villagers of Kalzuma gathered near the palace ruins, watching cautiously as the land slowly revived. Children laughed as green grass sprouted beneath their feet. Birds sang once more in the trees. Old Maji approached Idris. Your song and Nahala's voice have brought life back to us. The people are ready to rebuild. Idris smiled, hope growing in his heart. Then we must help them. Together. The burden of time. But in the quiet corners of the palace, Bako wrestled with shadows in his mind. At night, he whispered to the darkness, what have I become? A king without a soul is no king at all. Nahala found him there, alone and trembling. Bako, she said softly, you don't have to face this alone. He looked up, eyes searching. Can your song heal a broken spirit? Her voice was full of compassion. The song is powerful, but healing also comes from forgiveness, of others, and of yourself. Bako closed his eyes, tears escaping despite himself. A new dawn. The next morning, the brothers stood together at the edge of the village. Idris looked at Bako, hope shining in his eyes. We have lost much, but we still have each other. Bako nodded, a small smile breaking through. Then let us begin to heal, the kingdom, the land, and ourselves. Nahala's voice joined theirs in a quiet song of new beginnings. The dawn broke softly over Kalzuma, painting the sky with hues of pink and gold. The air carried a fresh scent of rain-soaked earth and new beginnings. The villagers gathered in the open square near the palace ruins, their faces still marked with worry, but now tinged with hope. Idris stood at the center, his gaze calm but filled with determination. Beside him, Bako's presence was quieter, still shadowed by the battles within, yet slowly regaining strength. Nahala's voice, light and clear, rose in a gentle song that seemed to ripple through the crowd like a warm breeze. Idris lifted his hands, calling for attention. People of Kalzuma, the worst is past. The land breathes again, and so must we. We will rebuild, together. An elder woman, Mama Zuri, stepped forward. But how, Prince Idris? Our homes lie broken, our fields barren for so long. The king is gone. What hope remains? Bako's voice startled the crowd as he spoke from behind his brother. We may be broken, but not beyond repair. The roots of the trees are deep, and so are we. This land is in our hearts. Nahala smiled gently. And with song and spirit, we will bring the land back to life. Nahala began to sing again, a melody soft but filled with power, the ancient song of the water spirits, passed down through generations of her people. As her voice soared, the crystal tear in Idris's hand shimmered, sending waves of light across the cracked earth. The villagers gasped as green shoots pushed through the dry soil. Flowers bloomed where none had been for years. The river, long silent, began to sing its way back through the valley. Young and old alike joined in the song, their voices weaving with Nahala's, lifting the spirits of all. Days passed, and the village stirred with life. Hands joined in work, repairing homes, planting crops, and clearing paths. The twins led with different strengths, Idris with calm wisdom, Bako with fierce determination to make amends. One afternoon, Idris found Bako sitting by the riverbank, watching the water flow. "How do you feel?" Bako sighed. "Like I'm carrying a shadow I can't shake. The root's bargain still haunts me." Idris placed a hand on his brother's shoulder. "You're not alone. We will face it, together." Nahala approached, offering a small bowl filled with water from the river. "This water is touched by the crystal tear. Drink it when your heart feels heavy. Let it remind you that healing takes time." Bako accepted the bowl with a faint smile. As the days grew longer, whispers traveled through the village, stories of miracles and strange happenings. Some said the trees whispered secrets. Others saw fish leap joyfully where the river had been silent. One evening, near the glowing embers of a fire, an old hunter named Tano told a tale. "The river spirit is alive again. I saw a shimmering figure beneath the water, a woman with eyes like the sea." Nahala smiled softly. "That is no tale, Tano. It is the spirit of hope. We all carry her within us now." The sun set, casting a golden glow over the village as the people gathered once more. Queen Lami addressed the crowd, her voice steady despite recent grief. "Though our king is gone, his wish lives on. We will honor him by caring for this land and each other." Idris and Bako stood side by side, their differences softened by shared purpose. Idris spoke to the people. "The greatest wonder was never a thing to hold, it is the love and courage we share. Let this be our legacy." Nahala lifted her voice in song, a melody of hope that seemed to rise with the stars. The days after the renewal were bright and full of promise, but beneath the surface of Kalzuma, shadows stirred. The villagers worked hard, yet a quiet unease settled over the land, a feeling like the calm before a storm. Idris noticed it first, in the restless eyes of the people and in Bako's growing silence. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the distant hills, Bako sat alone by the dying fire near the palace ruins. His fingers trembled as he held the wooden root, the time-stopping root he had bargained for. Nahala approached carefully, her voice barely above a whisper. "Bako, the root's power is heavy. It weighs not only on your soul but on the land itself." Bako looked up, shadows under his eyes deepening. "I hear whispers at night, Nahala. Voices calling me to do things I do not want. I fear I am losing myself." Nahala sat beside him, her eyes kind yet serious. "The bargain you made is not easily broken. Each dawn, a piece of your soul slips away. The root demands a price." Bako's voice cracked. "What price is too high? I wanted to protect my people, but now, I fear I have doomed us all." The next morning, whispers spread through the village like wildfire. Crops that had begun to grow now withered overnight. The river's song faltered in quiet places, and some animals disappeared into the thickening forest. Mama Zuri, the elder woman, gathered the villagers. "This is no ordinary sickness. It is a shadow that creeps from the palace itself. We must speak with the princes." Idris listened carefully, then sent messengers to gather everyone at the village square. When the villagers gathered, Idris stood tall. "People of Kalzuma, I know you fear what is happening. But we will face this together." Bako stepped forward, his voice heavy with guilt. "My actions have caused this shadow. The root I took has bound me, and now it threatens all of us." A murmur spread through the crowd. Some villagers looked afraid, others angry. A young man named Kofi shouted, "How can we trust a prince who sells his soul for power?" Bako's eyes burned with sorrow. I am not asking for your forgiveness, only your chance to make this right. Nahala raised her hand, and the crowd fell silent. The shadows come because the balance is broken. But balance can be restored, not with power alone, but with courage and heart. That night, Idris found Bako standing on the edge of the river, staring into the dark water. "Brother," Idris said softly, "you carry a heavy burden. But you do not carry it alone." Bako shook his head. "I fear I am a shadow now. The root takes more than time, it takes who I am." Idris stepped closer. "Then we must find a way to heal what the root has broken. Together, we can fight the shadows." Nahala appeared beside them, her voice steady and full of hope. "There is an old magic, older than the root's power, a magic of forgiveness and sacrifice. But it will require great courage." Bako swallowed hard. "Tell me what to do." The brothers and Nahala gathered the next morning. The villagers watched as the three prepared to leave the village, stepping toward the forest's edge where ancient mysteries awaited. Idris spoke to the crowd. "We go to find the heartwood tree, the source of the old magic Nahala speaks of. It may be the key to saving Bako, and all of Kalzuma." Mama Zuri stepped forward, placing a hand on Nahala's arm. "Be careful, child of the sea. The forest holds both wonders and dangers." Nahala nodded, determination shining in her eyes. "We will return, with hope." As the sun climbed high, Idris, Bako, and Nahala entered the thick forest. Shadows danced between towering trees. Strange calls echoed from unseen creatures. Bako's footsteps faltered. "This place feels alive, watching." Idris smiled gently. "It is alive. And it will test us." Nahala's voice dropped to a whisper. "The heartwood tree is protected by ancient spirits. They will judge us." Bako's hands clenched. "Then we must be ready." The forest of Mbali, known to the oldest griots as the forest that remembers, was a living memory. Every rustling leaf whispered forgotten tales, and every shadow held the breath of things long gone. It was no ordinary forest, it had a soul. The path narrowed as Idris, Bako, and Nahala walked deeper into the woods. The air grew thick and sweet like fermented fruit, and a soft mist curled around their ankles like playful spirits. Sunlight barely pierced the high canopy, and the ground was soft with centuries of fallen leaves. Nahala moved carefully, her eyes constantly scanning. "We are close. I feel it in my bones. But this place, it watches." Bako stopped to touch the trunk of a tree covered in twisting, glowing markings. "These lines. They're like stories carved into bark." Idris nodded. "The elders say the heartwood tree holds all stories, every joy, every mistake. And it remembers who you are." A low hum filled the air. The forest was waking. They arrived at a large clearing where the mist swirled faster, like a giant's breath. In the center stood a massive tree, wider than a house, its roots sprawling like the arms of ancestors reaching from the earth. Its bark glowed faintly with golden veins, and its leaves shimmered between green, silver, and bronze. "The heartwood tree," whispered Nahala in awe. The moment they stepped closer, the mist thickened, and the forest fell silent. Then, three shapes emerged from the tree's roots, spirit guardians. Each bore the face of a different age, a child with glowing white eyes, a middle-aged woman with a staff of vines, and an old man whose beard flowed like river water. They spoke in one voice. "To touch the heartwood, you must first face your true self." Bako's trial, the fractured soul. Bako stepped forward. The forest spirits nodded. "You, child of ambition, gave away what was not yours to give. You sought greatness without knowing its weight." The mist swirled, and suddenly Bako stood alone. A mirror rose from the earth, made of bone and glass. In it, he saw 1,000 reflections of himself, some proud, others afraid, and one that looked back at him with hollow, soulless eyes. That reflection spoke. "You traded me away." Bako trembled. "I wanted to stop time, to save our people. You feared being forgotten. You feared being second," the reflection sneered. Bako's fists clenched. "I was afraid, yes. afraid that I was only half of something. Always Idris and Bako. Never Bako alone. The reflection nodded slowly. Then own your name. Forgive your fear. The mirror shattered, and the spirit's voice returned. You may pass. But your soul is still broken. Seek the healing. Idris trial, the weight of goodness. Next, Idris approached. The spirits turned to him with softer eyes. You, child of empathy, carry the burdens of others. But you hide your own pain. Suddenly, Idris was surrounded by people from the village, children, elders, his father, each calling his name, needing help. Then he saw a younger version of himself, watching their mother's funeral from afar, holding back tears as Bako cried openly. You were strong for everyone, but never for yourself, the younger Idris whispered. Tears filled Idris' eyes. I thought if I stayed strong, everything would be okay. I had to be the calm. But even the calm must grieve. He knelt on the ground and wept. For his father. For his mother. For himself. The forest trembled gently, and the spirits said, Now you may rise. The land will answer your tears with healing. Nahala's trial, the voice returned. Nahala stepped forward last. The spirit stared long at her. You, daughter of the deep, lost your voice to silence the storm. Yet the storm never left you. Suddenly, she stood before the salt shrine where Idris had first found her. The cold stone walls loomed, and the silence returned. She clutched her throat, no sound. Then she saw herself as a child, playing with seashells, laughing freely. Another Nahala appeared, older, braver, but broken. You were not born to be silent. Nahala closed her eyes. The world punished my voice. My songs caused waves. I thought if I stayed silent, I'd be safe. The young Nahala reached out and touched her. And then, her voice returned. But this time, it was not just music. It was thunder and honey. It was power. She sang. A note that shook the trees and stirred the clouds. It wasn't just beautiful, it was true. The spirits bowed. Daughter of the deep, your voice is whole. Sing, and the world shall listen. The Heartwood's gift. The three approached the Heartwood tree together. Its roots parted, revealing a glowing seed resting on a stone pedestal. The spirits spoke one final time. This is the seed of balance. It will heal what was broken, but only when planted with a true heart. Choose your moment wisely. As Idris took the seed, the forest gave a deep sigh, as though it had been holding its breath for 1,000 years. Bako looked to his brother. I still don't know if I can be saved. You're already choosing the path, Idris said, placing a hand on his shoulder. Nahala nodded. Let us go home. The storm is not over, but we have found the light. The journey back begins. As they left Mbali Forest, a gentle rain began to fall, soft and cleansing. Flowers bloomed where the water touched. The river, once quiet, began to hum a familiar tune. The balance was stirring. But in the shadows of Kalzuma, another force had awakened. Something had followed them from the forest. Something old. Something hungry. The rain followed them out of Mbali Forest. But it was no ordinary rain, it whispered. The droplets sang in strange tongues, like lullabies from forgotten mothers, and for a while, it soothed their weary steps. But as Idris, Bako, and Nahala approached the lowland hills leading to Kalzuma's edge, the whispers turned into something else. They turned into breaths. Shallow. Hollow. Like something was inhaling behind them. Nahala paused on a ridgeline, her sea-colored eyes narrowing. We are not alone. Idris gripped his staff tightly. Do you feel it too? I don't feel it, she said. I hear it. Bako, still silent after his trial, turned sharply. That sound, it's like the mirrors. Idris stepped beside his brother. Mirrors. In the trial, my broken soul was like mirrors, all speaking at once. But some were quiet. Some were just staring. Watching. waiting. The air grew colder. The skies dimmed. And the rain stopped midair, as though held in a long breath. And then, from the dark roots of the trail behind them, it stepped forward. The thing without sound. It was not a man, not a beast. It had no true form. It was shaped from absence, the silhouette of something you forgot in a dream, with skin like cracked glass and eyes like silent screams. It was the hungry silence. Nahala's voice faltered. It followed us from the forest. Or maybe, it was always waiting at the edge of our path. The creature took a step forward, no sound. The grass beneath its feet wilted. The sky grew darker. And from behind the shape, a long whisper crawled into their minds. You have remembered too much. Now forget. The attack. Idris raised his staff, calling the Song of Roots, a chant taught by the Griots of Kalzuma to connect warriors to the land's strength. O spirit of sand and sun, rise beneath me, root and run. Green tendrils of vine burst from the soil, lashing toward the creature. But the hungry silence swallowed the vines whole. Not physically, but with its aura. The green dimmed. The plants withered. And the sound of Idris's chant vanished. Bako screamed in rage, lunging forward with his bronze blade, etched with sun symbols from the swamp witch. He struck, but his blade slowed midair, like moving through thick honey. The edge touched the creature's side, only for the metal to crack and turn to dust. The creature opened its mouth, a hollow, yawning void. No sound came out. And that was the terror. The voice of one. Nahala stepped forward, slowly removing the coral necklace from her throat. You fear voices. You feed on silence. But I have found mine. She raised her hand. And sang. At first, it was a hum, soft as river breeze. Then it grew, a siren's call of oceans and storms, of laughter and tears, of all the sound the creature tried to erase. The hungry silence shrieked, not aloud, but in the pain of its being. It staggered back. Her voice wrapped around it like a net of fireflies. It trembled, swayed. But then the creature split into three. Three smaller versions now surrounded them, advancing from all sides. Idris turned to Bako. Can you slow time again? Bako hesitated. If I do, I lose another piece of my soul. I may not return. Nahala looked at him. Your soul is not broken. It is in pieces, yes, but each piece is still yours. Choose which one to give. Bako closed his eyes. The tether. He placed his hand to the earth and chanted words the swamp witch taught him. Root of bone, hold the breath. Let this moment defy death. Time around the three creatures halted. Leaves stopped midair. Wind ceased. But Bako's hand began to pale, his fingers turning stone gray. Idris ran forward with the heartwood seed. Nahala, your voice, can it awaken the land? She nodded and lifted her hands, singing a song older than language. It was the lullaby of the deep sisters, of coral reefs and moonlit tides. As she sang, Idris dug his hands into the soil and planted the seed. The heart awakens. From the place where the seed entered the earth, a pulse of green light spread like ripples on a still lake. Grass grew taller. Trees bent toward the trio. The land itself whispered. You have remembered what was lost. So now, we shall speak again. The creatures of silence began to crack, their dark bodies splitting like old bark. From inside each, something strange burst forth, not evil, but wounded. They were forgotten memories, lost songs, orphan voices, the cries of children whose stories were never told. Idris wept. They were never evil. They were pain, made solid. The forest wrapped vines around the creatures, not to trap them, but to hold them, like a mother would a lost child. The hungry silence faded. And in its place, was stillness. But not empty stillness. Peaceful stillness. Aftermath. Bako collapsed. His left hand was stone, cold and unmoving. He looked at Idris with a tired smile. I don't think I can give much more. Idris held his brother's hand. You've given enough for a kingdom. Nahala rested beside them, her voice quiet now. We must hurry. The eclipse draws near. And your father waits. Idris looked to the sky. Dark clouds parted. The sun blinked. The countdown had begun. The sky was no longer blue. It was silver and gray, like the breath of an old spirit settling on the world. Clouds circled the sun as if gathering for a final story, and the air felt tight, like a drum stretched too thin. Idris, Bako, and Nahala stood at the mouth of the valley leading into Kalzuma. From the hilltop, they could see the land stretching like a sleeping lion. The once green fields had turned brittle and cracked. Crops withered. The river Zula barely crawled. And above it all stood the golden palace of King Zahari, now dimmed in color, as though even its walls were preparing to say goodbye. Nahala touched Idris's arm gently. He is waiting. Idris's heart ached. What if we are too late? Bako said nothing. He clutched his stone hand under his cloak, hiding the pain. He walked faster. The drums had stopped. No songs echoed through the hills. Kalzuma had gone silent. The palace of fading time. As they entered the city, guards bowed in silence. No words were spoken. Only tears flowed down cheeks painted in mourning clay. The people lined the road, eyes wide with hope and fear, watching the sons of the king. Idris held the crystal tear close to his chest. It glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. A healer named Anja stepped forward as they reached the palace gates. Her voice trembled. Your father is slipping. The moon kisses the sun. There is not much time. Idris nodded. Take us to him. Inside the palace, everything smelled of herbs, smoke, and farewell. The king's bed. King Zahari lay on a mat of woven reeds, his skin ashen, lips cracked, and breath shallow. His once powerful hands now trembled like old leaves. But his eyes were still fire. When he saw his sons, he tried to speak. His voice came like the rustle of dry leaves. Idris. Bako. The twins knelt beside him. Idris held his father's hand. We have come back, Baba. I found something. A wonder. Bako leaned close. So did I. The king's eyes moved slowly between them. What did you learn? Idris lifted the crystal tear. It shimmered like a memory. This is the tear of Nahala. A mermaid imprisoned by salt, set free by a song. It can heal, but only once. King Zahari's gaze shifted to Bako. And you? Bako lowered his hood. His left arm, from the shoulder down, was now stone. I made a bargain. I took the root of time from a witch. But every dawn, it eats part of my soul. Zahari smiled faintly. One gave all to heal. The other gave all to rule. The air darkened. Outside the window, the eclipse had begun. The test of truth. Before the sun hides fully, the king whispered, I must know, which of you truly holds the greatest wonder. The room grew cold. Nahala stepped forward, her voice soft. The wonder is not the tear. Not the root. But the truth you carry. Idris turned to Bako. Let me use the tear on father. Bako's eyes burned. No. Idris stared, confused. Why? If he dies now, Bako said, I can freeze time. I can take the throne. I can save everything, forever. Nahala gasped. Your soul is already broken. Bako shouted. Outside, the people began to chant. A low hum. The song of farewell. Zahari's breath hitched. Idris stepped forward. We must choose now. Not with pride, not with power, but with love. He pressed the tear against the king's chest. The crystal glowed. The choice. But Zahari raised a weak hand. Stop. Idris froze. Do not heal me, Zahari whispered. Heal the land. Everyone stared in shock. The blight, the drought, the sickness of Kalzuma is not from old age or war. It is from the heart of the land itself. He coughed, and blood touched his lips. Go to the Garden of Kings, he whispered. Bury the tear in the soil. Let the land drink the song of the mermaid. Let it remember. But you'll die, Idris said. Zahari smiled. Then I will be the root of new life. A tear slipped down Idris's face. The eclipse peaks. Bako stood still. He looked at his father. He looked at his hand, now halfway to his elbow turned to stone. He looked at Idris. You'll let him die. Idris looked at his brother. I will let him live forever, in the land. Bako stepped back. Then I must choose too. He took the root from his bag, the twisted, glowing plant from the swamp, and raised it to the sky. I freeze time. I take the crown. The wind howled. The palace trembled. But the root pulsed once, and then crumbled to dust. Bako screamed. His knees hit the ground. Two fractured. The swamp witch's voice echoed in his head. Only a soul that still remembers love can hold time. And Bako had lost too many pieces. The palace shook. Cracks split the walls. The sky turned gold, then black. Zahari closed his eyes with a soft smile. I am proud of you both, he said. Even you, Bako. For trying. He exhaled one last time. And then the eclipse ended. The sun blinked through. And the king was gone. A song rises. Nahala placed her hand on Idris's. It is time. They carried the tear to the Garden of Kings. There, under the largest baobab tree, Idris knelt and dug into the earth. He buried the tear. The land held its breath. And then it bloomed. Green light exploded across the garden, racing through roots and rivers, across hills and valleys. Flowers burst. Water flowed again. The river Zula danced. And high in the wind, Nahala sang. Her voice reached every hut, every child, every broken thing. And the people of Kalzuma wept, not from sorrow, but from hope. The land had not sung in years. But on the day the eclipse ended, and King Zahari's body turned cold, a strange and beautiful thing happened. The people of Kalzuma began to sing again. It started with a child. A small boy named Kinna, who had not spoken since the drought stole his mother, stood barefoot in the red dust of the palace garden. As the roots of the great baobab tree lit up with the power of the mermaid's tear, something stirred in his heart. A tune, soft, sweet, and old as the river, slipped through his lips. Mama sang this, he whispered. Then his sister joined in. Then their neighbor. Then the palace guards. Soon, 1,000 voices lifted into the air, weaving into Nahala's song like threads in a great loom. Even the wind swayed. Even the trees leaned in. Even the river hummed. And in the middle of the garden, Idris wept, not out of sorrow, but out of something deeper. Peace. The river walks again. The river Zula, which had curled in on itself like a dying snake, suddenly stretched and uncoiled. Its waters rolled and crashed over dried rocks. Fishermen rushed to the riverbanks, weeping and laughing as their nets danced once more. Old women dipped cloths into the flowing water and blessed it with their prayers. Young men scooped it up with cupped hands and poured it over their heads. Even the animals felt it. The frogs sang again. The birds returned. The land was healing. And at the center of it all was Nahala, her tail now gone, her legs slender and strong like a river dancer's. Her skin shimmered like moonlight, and her eyes sparkled with gratitude. She turned to Idris. You have done what no prince before you dared to do, she said. You listened, not just to my song, but to my silence. Idris smiled, his hands covered in soil. We buried a tear, and it bloomed. Nahala nodded. Because tears, when given freely, carry truth. Bako's shadow. But not everyone sang. In the deepest corner of the palace ruins, where the walls had crumbled from the failed freezing of time, Bako sat in silence. His arm was now stone to the shoulder. His skin had turned pale, almost gray. His eyes, once sharp as blades, had dulled like river pebbles. He heard the singing, but it felt far away. Like it belonged to someone else. A servant named Zala, who had once helped raise him as a child, dared to approach. She placed a clay cup of water beside him. "Prince Bako," she said gently. He did not move. "You should drink. The river flows again." Still, he said nothing. Zala bowed. "I remember when you were a boy, and you cried because a frog died in your hand. You buried it behind the palace and marked it with a flower." Bako's lips quivered. "That boy is gone." "No," she said, "he's just asleep." She left the water beside him and walked away. He stared at the cup, then at his stone hand, then at the sky. The song of the land. That night, Kalzuma held a vigil under the stars. No kings. No crowns. Just drums, songs, food, and laughter. People shared stories of the old king's wisdom, of Idris's journey westward, of Bako's strength even in sorrow. Idris sat by the fire, legs crossed, eyes full of questions. A boy approached him with a wooden bowl. "Your Highness, will you eat with us?" Idris smiled. "Call me Idris." The boy laughed. "All right, Prince Idris." "No," Idris corrected gently, "just Idris. A servant of the land." Nahala, sitting beside him, touched his shoulder. "You do not need a crown to rule. The land already hears you." Idris looked toward the hills where King Zahari had once stood tall. He closed his eyes. "Then let it begin," he whispered, "a kingdom not of gold or war, but of green." Bako's dream. That night, Bako dreamt. He was walking through the swamp of shadows again, but it no longer frightened him. The fog was thick, yes, but not choking. The witch's hut appeared, but she was not inside. Instead, a mirror floated where she had once sat. Bako stepped forward and saw his reflection. Not a prince. Not a king. Not even a boy. Just a man. With cracks. And regrets. And hope. Then he saw something behind him in the mirror, a sprouting root, breaking through stone. A green shoot, rising from his back. He woke up with a gasp. And for the first time in many days, he cried. Tears, warm and human, rolled down his face. The people's voice. In the days that followed, the people of Kalzuma began to rebuild, not with orders from a throne, but with voices from the earth. They planted gardens on rooftops. They built bridges over the river. They painted their houses with songs. And every dawn, a choir of children would gather at the Garden of Kings to sing the song of Nahala. Her voice had become their anthem, her freedom their inspiration. And Nahala? She wandered the villages barefoot, dancing and laughing with the children, teaching them songs the sea had hidden for generations. She was no longer bound to the salt shrine. She belonged to the land now. The stone begins to crack. One morning, as birds danced above, Bako stood before the great baobab tree. He placed his stone hand against it. I was wrong, he whispered. The tree said nothing, but the wind rustled its leaves. He knelt. And in the soft, silent language of a broken soul, he said the words he had never said before. Forgive me. And the stone on his arm cracked. A single vine pushed out from his palm. The sun rose gently over Kalzuma, as if the sky itself were cautious not to disturb the peace now blooming across the land. The palace walls were no more, crumbled stones now covered in moss and creeping vines. The throne room had become an open-air garden. Where there were once guards with spears, now grew tall stalks of millet. Where banners once fluttered in warning, now birds made their nests and sang freely. In the middle of it all, the great stone chair, once King Zahari's throne, sat beneath a canopy of fig trees, empty and untouched since the eclipse. But today, it would no longer be silent. the elders had gathered. The weavers, the hunters, the potters, the children, and the singers all stood around the old throne as the morning wind danced through their hair. No one wore gold. No one knelt. There were no trumpets. Just hearts, beating with hope and questions. Elder Muntu, the oldest living man in Kalzuma, leaned on his carved staff and looked at the twins. "You have both walked far," he said, his voice like the rustle of dry leaves. "You, Idris, who listened to a forgotten voice and healed the land with a single tear. And you, Bako, who faced the darkness inside you and returned with a root that could stop time." His eyes gleamed like fireflies. "Now," the people asked, "who will sit on this throne?" A hush fell. All eyes turned to Idris. But he didn't move. Instead, he bent down, scooped up a handful of soil from the base of the throne, and let it run between his fingers. "I came back not to rule," he said softly, "but to serve." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Idris turned to the people. "My father ruled from above. But the land, this land, taught me that the real power lies below. In the roots. In the water. In the voices you thought no one could hear." He stepped away from the throne. "Let this chair remain empty," he said. "Not because we have no king, but because all of us must now become guardians of the land. We will lead with our hands. With our hearts. With song and seed." An elder woman with skin like dried bark and eyes like pearls stepped forward. "If there is no king, who will guide us in times of trouble?" Idris smiled. "We will build a council of the circle, one voice from each village, each age, each craft. From the mountain, the river, the forest, the fields. Everyone will speak. Everyone will listen." Another young man raised his hand. "And if we disagree?" Idris looked at him with warmth. "Then we sit beneath the fig tree until we find the path. The circle is born." And so it was that Kalzuma's throne was not claimed, but honored in silence. The Council of the Circle was born that very afternoon. Nahala was chosen as the voice of the rivers. Elder Muntu represented the wisdom of time. Zala, the servant who once fed Bako in his despair, became the voice of the silent, the cooks, the cleaners, the unnoticed hands who held up the kingdom. Even the children were given a voice. Young Kinna, the boy who had first begun to sing, sat at the circle, his legs barely reaching the ground, his eyes wide and bright. Together, they drew the tree of balance in the sand, each branch representing a part of the kingdom. "No more crowns," they said. "No more silence. Bako's test." But far away from the circle, Bako stood alone at the edge of the river Zula. He stared at the reflection of his cracked stone arm. Though vines had begun to grow from the broken pieces, the pain remained. Not just in his bones, but in his spirit. Then he heard footsteps. It was Nahala. She stood beside him quietly, her feet gently pressing into the wet sand. "You did not come to the circle," she said. "I have nothing to give," Bako replied, his voice flat. She shook her head. "You gave more than anyone. You lost part of your soul to bring back a root that holds time. Even now, the land remembers." Bako clenched his jaw. "But I broke everything. I tried to steal the crown. I let ambition swallow me." Nahala placed her hand gently over the stone vines growing from his arm. "Sometimes," she whispered, "a broken pot holds the rain longer." He looked at her, puzzled. "You see your cracks as weakness," she continued, "but the rain, wisdom, pain, growth, it seeps in through those very cracks. You've changed." Bako said nothing. But his eyes began to glisten. "Then what do I do now?" Nahala smiled. "Return. A place beside the circle." The next morning, Bako stood before the council. Not in fine robes. Not with guards or drums. He wore a simple woven tunic, his cracked arm uncovered for all to see. He stood beside his brother, no longer as rival, but as brother again. "I do not ask to lead," he said. "But I ask to walk beside those who do." The people watched in silence. "I will tend the garden of time," Bako offered. "The root I brought back, it can slow time. I will plant it here, in the garden, so that when the people are troubled, when storms rise or sickness comes, they may walk its path. And remember." There was silence. Then Elder Munta stood. He placed his staff on the ground and said, "Let the past be roots. Let today be branches. And let tomorrow bloom." The people clapped. And the song began again. The Garden of Time. Baco built the garden himself. No servants. No magic. Just him, his hands, and the slowly healing land. The thyme root was planted in the center of the garden, beneath a round stone. Its flowers only bloomed at dawn, and only those who entered with open hearts could hear it hum. It became a place of deep thought, of memory, of forgiveness. Idris visited often. Nahala would bring children to teach them how to sing to the flowers. Sometimes, they even caught the root dancing, swaying to a rhythm only the earth knew. And Baco. He sat beneath the tree, not as a prince or ruler, but as a man who had fallen and risen again. For many moons, peace bloomed like wildflowers across the land of Kalzuma. Crops rose tall and golden. Rivers flowed clear again. Children's laughter echoed through the hills. And the council of the circle met each moonrise under the great fig tree to guide the land with wisdom, kindness, and balance. But deep beneath Lake Inu, far to the east, where no child swam and no boat dared float, a different sound stirred. Boom. A low, slow rumble. Boom, boom. The fish darted away. The water grew warm. And the ancient stones buried at the lake's bottom began to glow, faint red, then orange, then the color of molten fire. The fire spirit of Inu was waking. Whispers from the flame. The first sign came from the smoke seers of Mtjji. Their leader, an old woman named Ajoke, who had lived over 100 rainy seasons, came to Kalzuma riding on a black-horned antelope. Her white braids were tied with ashes, and her eyes burned like hot coal. She arrived during the council's morning gathering. "I bring news from the fire," she said. Everyone grew silent as she spoke. "The lake is rising. The fire beneath it no longer sleeps. The earth shakes, the birds fly away early. Something has disturbed the spirit of Inu." Elder Munta leaned forward. "But why now?" Ajoke's voice turned heavy. "Because the land has changed. Power has shifted. Where once there was one voice, now there are many. The fire spirit does not understand, and does not care." Gasps filled the air. Ajoke continued. "If it erupts, Kalzuma will burn. The rivers will boil. The circle will be lost. Unless someone speaks to the fire, before it reaches the sky." That evening, Idris stood with Baco at the edge of their village, watching the horizon glow faintly orange. "Nahala says the water near the salt shrine has warmed," said Idris. Baco nodded. "Even the root in the Garden of Time is pulsing. Like it's afraid." Idris looked down at his brother's stone arm, now covered in tiny blooming vines. "We faced magic," Idris said. "Curses. Time. Even death." Baco looked toward the rising heat in the east. "But this is not just magic. It's rage. Old rage." Idris took a deep breath. "Then we speak to it. Not with power. Not with fear. But with what we've learned." Baco smiled faintly. "Understanding. Sacrifice. And voice." Together, they walked back to the circle. "I will go," said Idris. "To speak to the fire spirit." "No," said Baco. "Not alone." He stepped forward. "We go together. Preparing for the unknown." The people gathered supplies. Amari, the village herbalist, gave them cooling herbs to protect their skin from the heat. Zala, now leader of the stone workers, gave them sandals made from the bark of flame-resistant trees. Kinna, the young singer, gave them a gourd of morning dew from the Garden of Time, its drop said to cool any fire that touches the soul. Nahala met them by the edge of the forest. She looked at them with worry, but pride. You walk into the belly of the world, she said. But remember, fire listens too. It just speaks slower. Then, for the first time, she kissed both their foreheads and sang the Song of Safe Paths, a lullaby once forgotten, now known again because Idris had once listened. The wind seemed to carry her song into the trees. The lake of boiling light. After 4 days of walking, the twins reached Lake Inu. What had once been a quiet place of mystery was now bubbling, glowing, and steaming with wild energy. Red mist floated above the surface. The water hissed with each splash, and blackened fish floated belly up near the shore. The ground trembled. Boom. Boom boom. Bako looked around. There's no shrine here. No gate. Just fire. But Idris closed his eyes. He listened. And beneath the hissing and rumbling, he heard it. A voice. It was deep. Slow. Ancient. Like the earth's heartbeat. It whispered, "Why have you changed the land?" Fire's trial. That night, the lake split. A crack opened in the center, and from its belly rose a creature made of molten rock and light. Its eyes were two spinning orbs of flame. Its chest cracked and hissed with steam, and its voice was the sound of cracking earth. The fire spirit of Inu. You. Who broke the old order. Who dared to share power. Its voice made the trees bend and birds fall from the sky. I ask you, why should I not burn it all back to silence? Bako stepped forward. You ask why we changed the land, he said, standing firm. Because the land asked for it. Because the people needed it. The land was mine to guard. It still is, Idris added. But fire must warm, not burn. The spirit growled. Flames leapt around them. I have been silent too long. Idris nodded. Then speak. We are listening. There was silence. And then the fire spirit began to lower its flames. The fire spirit of Inu stood tall above the bubbling lake, its chest glowing like a furnace, its arms crackling with streams of lava. But its voice had softened, not gentle, but no longer violent. You say you will listen, it said, its molten eyes fixed on Idris and Bako. Idris took a careful step forward, the cool herbs Amari gave them protecting his skin from the blistering heat. Yes, he said. For too long, the world has only spoken to power. But we have learned, the greatest wonder is not what you take, but what you understand. The fire spirit tilted its head. From its chest came a strange pulse, like the beat of a drum heard through stone. Then sit, children of the new dawn, it said, voice crackling like firewood. And hear my pain. The ancient betrayal. The spirit raised both of its arms, and the lake stilled. Steam rose in long, twisting ribbons. Then, from the fire around it, images began to form. They shimmered like heat waves over the sand. A story made of flame. In the first time, the spirit began, when the land was still finding its shape, Kalzuma was not ruled by kings. It was guided by voices of the elements, the river, the wind, the stone, and the flame. Each had a guardian, and the land was balanced. Idris and Bako listened carefully. But as people grew in number and wisdom, the fire spirit continued, they began to crave order. They built palaces. Raised flags. Named kings. The image showed a young king Zaharii, with a golden crown and a staff of light. And though he was wise, he feared the wildness of the elements. He feared that the fire would burn what he could not control. A red flame turned dark. He made a pact in secret with the river guardian. The wind was tamed, the stone buried deep, and I, the fire, was locked beneath this lake. Sealed in silence. The flames danced into the image of an old ritual, where chains of magic wrapped around a blazing heart, dragging it into the deep. You call me angry, the fire spirit said, lowering its head. But I am not rage. I am forgotten. The weight of truth. Bako stared into the flames. So, our kingdom was built on betrayal. Idris bowed his head. We did not know. Our father didn't know. His father may not have known either. But knowledge passed in silence is still a sin, the fire spirit boomed. Now, you must choose. Do you release me and risk the chaos I may bring? Or leave me chained and keep your peace, built on lies? The air grew heavy. Idris stood. We want neither silence nor destruction. We want truth. Baco looked at his hand, his stone arm, blooming with vines. The proof of his own mistake and growth. He stepped forward. Then tell us what must be done. A trial of flame. The fire spirit's body rose higher. If you wish to free me, it said, you must survive the trial of flame and voice. The lake boiled and a path of glowing stones rose across the water. You must walk across the burning path, speak the names of the forgotten guardians, and reach the pillar of truth at the lake's center. But if your voice wavers, or you forget a single name, you will be consumed. Idris nodded. We accept. The spirit's flaming chest pulsed again. Then begin. The burning path. Idris stepped onto the first stone, it hissed beneath his foot, but the cooling herbs held. He turned back. Baco was right behind him. Step by step, they moved forward. Speak, boomed the fire spirit. Call the names. Idris remembered the stories. Oriya, the guardian of the wind. The stone flashed and cooled beneath him. Baco called next. Zubari, the stone's protector. Another stone flashed. Asha, guardian of the river, Idris shouted. The path shimmered. Now came the final step. The fire roared around them. Heat tore at their skin. Baco hesitated. What was fire's name? They both looked at the spirit. It stood still, silent. Suddenly, Idris closed his eyes. He remembered Nahala's words, fire listens too. It just speaks slower. And in that stillness, he heard it, deep inside himself, not in his ears. Imara, Idris whispered. The final stone cooled. The flames drew back. And from the center of the lake, a golden pillar rose, a spire made of cooled lava, ancient carvings spiraling up its sides. It shone with words not seen in 1,000 years. The truth restored. The fire spirit knelt. You have listened, it said. You have remembered. You have spoken my name. The lake cooled. The skies above cleared. Even the birds returned. Imara, the forgotten guardian, was free. But I do not seek to rule, Imara said. Only to belong. Let Kalzuma be ruled not by fear, nor silence, but by voices that remember all things. Idris and Baco looked at each other, hearts full. We will not forget again, Idris said. The sky over Kalzuma had changed. Not because of the weather, but because something deeper, older, and long forgotten had stirred. The trees whispered it. The rivers carried it. The ground itself seemed to listen. Idris and Baco, now returned from the fire lake of Inu, stood at the edge of the royal city, gazing at the ancient gates carved from white baobab trunks. Their sandals were torn. Their cloaks were soot-streaked and river-wet. But their eyes burned with purpose. Behind them, Nahala, the mermaid freed from the salt shrine, walked beside the fire guardian Imara, now wearing a form of molten gold and ash, shaped like a human, but still humming with flame. And in the wind above flew the wind raven Oriya, a great white bird of storm and cloud. They had come to form something never seen before in Kalzuma's history, a council that included all things. The gates of Kalzuma. The guards at the gate, stunned by the return of the prince's thought lost, dropped to their knees. One guard whispered, the eclipse took the king. We thought you perished too. Baco stepped forward. We did not perish. But we have seen the death of something far greater, our silence. Idris raised his voice. Open the gates. Not just for us, but for the voices that have waited centuries to be heard. Behind them, the ground rumbled. The trees swayed. And even the river that ran under the palace bridge seemed to rise. The gates of Kalzuma groaned open, and for the first time in living memory, the city welcomed not just royalty, but river spirits, sky birds, and fire gods. The Morning Palace. Inside the palace, the mood was still heavy with mourning. King Zahari's body had been laid in the Hall of Kings, surrounded by burning incense and folded leaves. The royal drums had not sounded in days. But Idris did not approach the throne. He knelt beside his father's bed of woven reeds and whispered, "You asked for the greatest wonder. You thought it would be power. But we have brought you something better, understanding." Nahala stepped forward, placing the crystal tear Idris had earned in the salt shrine beside the king's chest. "He shall rest now," she said. "Whole, if not alive." The tear glowed once, softly, and then dimmed, having given its only gift. The land outside rustled, as if exhaling. The gathering. The twins sent messages throughout the land. To the river villages of Ofa and Tail, to the desert wanderers of Tando, to the sky-seers of the high cliffs, and even to the mountain dwellers who spoke with stones. They were called not to bow, but to speak. And they came. The grand hall of Kalzuma had never seen such a gathering. An elder from the river Omi, carrying a staff shaped like a fish's tail. A sand speaker with eyes as pale as dawn. A young girl who dreamed the speech of trees. Oriya the wind raven, perched on a high beam. Imara, seated like a lion made of coal and fire. Nahala, glowing softly, her saltwater hair braided with river flowers. The people watched in awe. "Are these spirits?" a child whispered. "No," said his mother. "They are forgotten friends." The council begins. Idris stood in the center of the hall, a circle of stones arranged around him. Kalzuma has long listened only to one voice, its king. He turned to the crowd. But the land has a voice. So does the river. The fire. Even silence speaks, if you let it. Bako added, "We come not to rule alone, but to share the voice of Kalzuma with all who care for it." A murmur rose. Not of discontent, but curiosity. "Let the first council begin," Idris declared. Voices heard. Each speaker stepped forward. The tree dreamer spoke of the soil's sorrow where trees were cut too fast. The river elder told of poisoned waters and fish that no longer sang. Imara told of flames sealed away, and how fire is not always destruction, but rebirth. Nahala reminded them that songs, like people, are only heard when someone listens. Even Bako, who once sought to rule alone, stood and offered a confession. "I gave a piece of my soul for power. But what I lost was worth more than a crown. I speak now not as a prince, but as a man learning still." The council listened. And the circle was whole. A new path. That night, beneath the stars, the council continued, not with rules or punishment, but with stories, music, and truth. The children danced beside river spirits. The fire warmed, but did not burn. The wind played with the leaves and sang the names of old guardians. And Idris, looking up at the stars, whispered to his brother, "This is what father wanted. He just didn't know it had to be found, not forged." Bako nodded. The greatest wonder was never a thing. It was a way of seeing. The sun rose slowly over Kalzuma, casting long golden shadows on the walls of the palace. It was a quiet morning, no royal drums, no processions, no guards marching. Just birdsong, wind in the leaves, and the soft hum of something new being born. Inside the Hall of Kings, Idris and Bako stood before the ancient ivory throne, a high-backed seat carved from the bones of the first great elephant ever seen by men in the plains of Wanta. The throne had always been a symbol of power. It had ruled over drought and harvest, over war and peace, over silence and speech. Now it sat heavy with silence. The golden crown of Kalzuma, encrusted with green river stones, rested on a cushion of woven palm fronds before them. Bako stared at it for a long time. "We were raised to believe that the crown made the king." Idris shook his head slowly. "But we've seen too much. The king is only as wise as the voices he allows to speak around him." They turned as footsteps echoed behind them. Nahala entered first, her mermaid shimmer now replaced by a simple blue robe tied with a reed belt. Her hair still smelled faintly of sea salt. Oriya the great white wind raven followed, landing on a perch of driftwood brought from the cliffs. Then Imara, glowing like coal under ash, walked silently and took a place near the fire basin. And finally, the village elders, council voices, and spirit keepers who had come to form the circle of all things. They gathered in a wide ring, facing the throne. It was time. The throne's question. A hush fell over the room. The crown seemed to gleam brighter for a moment, as if hearing the quiet. Imara's voice crackled like dry logs. Who shall wear it? Nahala tilted her head. Or should it be worn at all? A young tree-dreamer girl from the forest stepped forward. When the trees speak, no one wears a crown. The tallest tree listens to the smallest root. Oriya gave a soft caw. The sky has no throne. Wind obeys no king. Yet everything moves in balance. There was silence again. Then Bako stepped forward and did something that shocked them all. He picked up the crown, held it high, and then placed it at Idris's feet. I thought I wanted this more than anything, Bako said. I gave pieces of myself for it. I tried to pause time, thinking I could rule forever. But what I needed wasn't to rule, it was to understand why ruling alone is always a mistake. Idris blinked, his throat tightening. I won't wear it, he said. Not because I don't love Kalzuma. But because love is not possession. And rule is not listening. He picked up the crown and walked slowly to the center of the circle. Then he knelt. And with a calm, deep breath, he broke the crown. He snapped the gold circlet across his knee. The gems clattered to the floor like fallen stars. A deep gasp filled the room, but it was not one of sorrow. It was of release. The curse of silence, passed down from king to king, was broken. The people speak. All around the hall, people began to speak, not with fear, but with feeling. I lost my brother to a river flood that no one prepared for, said an old woman from the east. No king heard my cries. My village's fire was taken by soldiers when we had nothing to eat, said a boy. We were punished for surviving. Our forests cry every dry season, said a sand-treader woman. But no one has listened, until now. The stories poured like a long-dammed river, breaking free. Pain. Hope. Dreams. Mistakes. No crown was needed to open those mouths. Only a circle. And for the first time in memory, Kalzuma's hall felt alive. New roots. By the river that evening, Idris and Bako sat with Nahala, watching children float palm boats in the water. Fireflies blinked. The air smelled of roasted groundnuts and river mint. You did it, Nahala said softly. No, Idris replied. We all did it. Together. Bako chuckled. Do you think father would have approved? Nahala smiled gently. King Zahari asked for a wonder. He just didn't know that it meant breaking what seemed unbreakable. Idris nodded. The wonder was voice. And what it does when it is shared. They sat in peace, not as rulers, but as brothers. As people. A living council. The next day, a new tradition began. A wide platform of woven wood and stone was built by the river, where anyone could come and speak. Each season, a gathering would be held. Not to crown a king, but to share. To listen. To decide. Imara stayed in the mountains, guiding young flame keepers. Oriya became the watcher of skies, delivering messages through wind and cloud. Nahala returned to the river of salt, but not as a prisoner. As a guardian. A singer of ancient truths. And the twins. They remained. Not as princes. But as keepers of the circle. The sun had barely risen when Nahala stirred from her rest beneath the fig tree near the river. The wind tasted of salt. A strange hush danced in the air, not the silence of fear, but the silence before something ancient stirs. As she stepped into the river's edge, her feet kissed the water gently. A hum vibrated through the current, pulsing up her legs and into her chest. Then she heard it. Nahala, the deep remembers. Her eyes widened. The voice was not of this world. It came from the ocean heart, a place far beyond the salt shrine where she was once imprisoned. A forgotten place, where merfolk kings slumbered beneath coral and time. She gasped. The last time the ocean heart spoke, it was to warn her people of the War of Tides, centuries ago. Now, it called again. The elders gather. That same day, Idris and Bako stood beside Nahala beneath the council tree. They listened as she told of the dark swell, a growing shadow far to the east, near the Valley of Ash, where fire and sea once clashed. Nahala's voice trembled. The ocean says, the old enemy returns. The one who fed on greed and silence. The one our father feared. Idris asked. Bako's face darkened. The one who promised kings immortality for silence. The Cracked Mask. The Cracked Mask had once been an advisor to kings across the lands. No one knew what he was, a man. A spirit. A shadow. He gave power, but took truth. His return meant danger not only to Kalzuma, but to the very idea of voice that Idris had fought to protect. With the blessing of the council, Nahala journeyed west, past the salt shrine, into the coral labyrinth, an underwater maze where time twisted and memories grew like seaweed. She sang her ancient song, now fully remembered. When water weeps, so shall we rise. With broken chains and open skies. Beneath the wave, beyond the shore. The silence sleeps, it breathes no more. Her voice woke the sleeping watchers of the deep, elder merfolk with eyes like moons and voices like drums. We remember, one said. Lead us. Back in Kalzuma, strange things began to happen. Children could not dream. Rivers stopped singing. The wind tasted of iron. And in the eastern sky, a single black cloud twisted like a serpent, growing each night. One morning, a stranger stood outside the palace ruins. He wore no face, just a smooth, cracked mask that shimmered like oil. His voice sounded like many voices whispering all at once. I have returned, to claim what was broken. The cracked mask stepped into the circle of the people. But his voice, like honey laced with ash, brought unease. You broke the crown, he said to Idris. Now wear mine. He held out a new crown, this one made of shadows and sorrow. Idris stepped back. We need no crown. We need only voice. Then let yours be taken. And with a gesture, the mask stole Idris's voice. Idris fell to his knees. His mouth moved, but no sound came. The people panicked. The circle scattered. Bako stood trembling. The cracked mask turned to him. You traded pieces of your soul once. Do you have any left to trade? Bako stepped forward, fists clenched. I do. And I give them freely now. The cracked mask smiled. But Bako didn't offer his soul to the mask. He offered it to Idris. With a cry, Bako placed both hands on his brother's shoulders. His eyes burned silver. His soul, the remnants of it, flowed into Idris like wind into fire. And Idris screamed. His voice returned. But it wasn't just his voice. It was every voice that had ever been silenced. As the cracked mask roared in fury, the skies darkened. Shadows poured from his robes like ink in water. But Idris stood tall. He raised his hands. And Nahala arrived, riding a wave of shimmering merfolk. They joined Idris. Together, they sang. No king shall own the breath we take. No crown shall bind the words we make. The sea, the sky, the land, the flame. All answer when we speak our name. The air pulsed. The shadows screamed. The cracked mask began to crack, not just the mask, but the thing inside it. His body twisted. Voices he had stolen poured from him in rivers of sound. Laughter. Crying. Songs. Shouts. The voices of people, once lost, now returned. And then, the cracked mask shattered. And was no more. In the days that followed, Kalzuma bloomed. The river ran with light. The forests whispered peace. Children dreamed again, this time, of circles instead of crowns. Idris and Bako planted a garden in the ruins of the palace. It grew fast, nourished by the soil of truth. Each plant was named after someone whose voice had once been taken, and now lived free. Nahala returned to the ocean heart, a guardian of song and sea. Imara lit the flame of listening in every village. And Oriya flew the skies, carrying stories on his wings. One evening, the people gathered beneath the stars. Elders, children, dreamers, drummers, dancers, river walkers, fire keepers, and tree whisperers. They asked Idris and Bako one last question. What was the greatest wonder of the world? Idris looked at his brother. Bako smiled gently. And together they said, the greatest wonder is not what you take or hold, but what you choose to give. The wonder is understanding. The wonder is voice. The wonder is us. And all the people sang. And the stars listened. And Kalzuma lived.